When Mark and I got married, I thought we were one of those rare couples who'd stay in love even when things got boring. He was calm, responsible, the kind of man who didn't play games. At least, I believed that for the first 7 years. Then something started shifting. Slowly, quietly. Enough for me to question myself before I questioned him. He started coming home later than usual. Said work was picking up. I didn't push. But then it turned into entire weekends out of town. Corporate retreats, he said. Yet he always came back distant, tired, like being home was more exhausting than the job he left. I tried to hold things together, made his favorite meals, asked about his day. He smiled, answered politely, but the warmth was gone. I told myself marriages go through phases, that I was overthinking, that I had no proof of anything. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling something was off. When my sister Lena asked if her son Jason could stay with us for the summer, I said yes without a second thought. It sounded like a good distraction. He was 17, quiet, a little glued to his screen, but polite. Kept to himself mostly. He'd nod, say, "Thank you," disappear into the guest room, and only come out for food or late-night snacks. One night I came downstairs for water and saw Mark in the living room, hunched over his phone. He didn't hear me. He smiled while typing. Then his smile dropped as he saw me watching. He quickly locked the screen. "Work stuff," he said. I nodded, said nothing, but something about the way he clenched his jaw stayed with me. Jason noticed it too, I think. The next morning he asked casually, "Uncle Mark works late a lot, huh?" I just smiled and said, "He's busy." Jason didn't push, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Observation, maybe? He notices things more than he lets on. It's strange how we pick up on things without meaning to. How silence between two people becomes a language of its own. I'd scroll through Mark's photos on social media and notice how few I was in lately. Just work events, group shots, or pictures of scenery with no context. Still, I told myself I was just bored, lonely. Until the day Jason asked, "Do you trust him?" I looked at him, unsure how to answer. That was the moment everything began to unravel. I didn't answer Jason right away. I just stared at him and said, "Of course I do." But I knew the truth was more complicated than that. I trusted who Mark used to be. I didn't know if I trusted the man I was living with now. That afternoon, while Mark was in the shower, I glanced at his phone charging on the nightstand. I didn't touch it, but I stared at it long enough to realize I wanted to. That alone scared me. When you start wanting to go through your spouse's phone, something is already broken. Jason walked in on me sitting at the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. He asked if I was okay. I forced a smile, told him I was tired. He nodded and left, it alone. But later that night, as we washed dishes together, he asked me something I hadn't expected. "Do you want help checking his messages?" I froze. I told him no, absolutely not. He was a kid. It wasn't his place. He said okay, but there was no judgment in his voice, just concern. I didn't sleep that night. I kept wondering who had turned me into this suspicious, restless version of myself. A few days later, Mark left town again. Another conference? Same excuses. This time I agreed when Jason offered to help. He was careful, respectful, and eerily skilled. He didn't need passwords. He said most people don't know how much their phones give away. He recovered fragments of deleted texts and pointed out a pattern. A contact saved as CC had several messages, all gone now. But one stood out. Recovered partially, it read, "Miss you already. Same time next week?" I asked Jason if he could find more. He did. A backup cache had an image file, blurry, zoomed in, cropped. Just a wrist, a bracelet, but not mine. I didn't recognize it. Jason did. "I think I've seen that in your Facebook pictures," he said. "On your friend, Chloe." I shook my head. No, that was impossible. Chloe and I had been friends for years. She knew every part of me, every part of my life. She wouldn't. She couldn't. Jason didn't argue. He just showed me the chat timestamps and compared them to a night Chloe and I were supposed to meet. But she had canceled last minute. Something in me shifted. It wasn't anger. It was the beginning of acceptance. That this wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was real. And it was worse than I imagined. I didn't confront Mark. Not yet. I needed more than fragments and blurry photos. I needed something undeniable. I asked Jason to dig further, and he did. Methodically, like he'd done this before. He checked Mark's cloud backups. Most people don't know their phones sync silently in the background. That's where he found it. A screen recording Mark had saved. Accidentally, maybe. It showed a video chat. Not the full thing, just a few seconds, but enough to hear a laugh. Chloe's laugh. I'd recognize it anywhere. Light, high-pitched, and fake. I didn't cry, not then. I just sat there while Jason watched me carefully. I asked him to leave the room. I needed to feel what I was feeling without an audience. And what I felt wasn't sadness. It was humiliation. Chloe had been in my home, drinking my coffee, telling me to communicate more with my husband. She gave advice like a concerned friend while sleeping with him behind my back. There were signs I'd just chosen to ignore them. The next morning, I put on a smile and made breakfast like nothing had changed. Mark said he was exhausted from travel. I offered him coffee. Jason watched everything from the kitchen table, silent. Later that day, I asked Jason if he could record audio from the living room without anyone knowing. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'll take care of it." That weekend, I told Mark I was meeting my sister for lunch. Instead, I parked down the street and waited. Chloe arrived 10 minutes later. She didn't knock. She let herself in. That told me everything I needed. The conversation they had was quiet at first, but Jason had boosted the audio. When I listened to the recording, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Mark said, "She still doesn't suspect a thing." Chloe laughed. "Of course she doesn't. She trusts me." He replied, "That's the irony. Her loyalty is the reason. This has been so easy." Then silence. Just the sound of ice clinking in a glass. I played the recording 3 times, not because I couldn't believe it, but because I needed to stop shaking before I did what came next. When Jason came into the room, I looked at him and said, "Thank you." He nodded, but his face was pale. He had uncovered the truth, but none of us were walking away from it unchanged. I didn't give her a chance to lie. Chloe came over the next day acting like everything was normal. I handed her my phone and pressed play. The recording filled the room. Her face changed with every second. First confusion, then panic, and finally, shame. She didn't deny it. She said it wasn't serious, that it just happened. She said she didn't want to hurt me. I told her that was exactly what she did. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just opened the door and watched her walk out of my life. Mark came, home to silence. I was calm when I confronted him. I told him I knew everything. About Chloe, about the messages, the deleted photos, the voice recording. He didn't argue. He barely even looked surprised. He just said, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I asked him when it started. He said 6 months ago, right around the time I stopped recognizing the man I married. I asked him why her. He said she listened. I almost laughed. That was always his excuse. Someone else filling the space I supposedly left behind. I told him we were done. No yelling, no begging, just done. He tried to guilt me, said we could fix it, said I shouldn't let Jason get involved. I told him Jason didn't break this family. He just uncovered what was already rotten. The divorce process began that week. Clean, fast, no drama. Mark didn't fight it. Chloe disappeared from my world. And Jason, he stayed. He never made it about himself. Never acted like a hero. But he was the reason I got the truth. The reason I didn't keep living in a lie. Some days I catch him watching me, like he's still making sure I'm okay. I always smile back. I don't need to say anything. He understands more than most adults I know. I've learned a lot. That betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. That silence can be a signal. That trusting your gut isn't paranoia. It's protection. Jason asked me once if I regretted knowing. I said no, because even though it shattered everything, it gave me something back I didn't know I'd lost. My clarity. He laughed and said, "Next time, I'll vet the guy for you." Maybe I'll let him. What he did during that message changed everything. And maybe, in the end, it saved me.